Hello, everyone. I am back with another interview with another lovely Webtoon Canvas creator. Today we have Chris.
Hello.
And Chris is the creator of Move Me.
Yay, move me.
Yay!
Yeah.
Why don't you start us off by reading your description?
Yep. So, the description of Move Me as is on the website is when Phil joins her small physiotherapy team, Kim has to deal with painful memories from the past and find a way to scare him away, or even better, get him fired. Will the past destroy them both, or would they be able to start anew? Woo!
Yeah! We're all doing like a round of applause.
Oh.
It always feels a little bit silly to start off the interview, but here we are. We're now in the trenches.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
So when I was going through your series, I was very impressed by it. Like, I really love your art, your writing. You're like, you have these like fun little like, I don't know if they would be called character acting because technically nothing's moving, but it feels almost like acting because I can like feel them moving. If that makes sense.
I think so. I think I do know what you mean, and thank you very much for saying that. I'm still quite new at making web comics and generally comics, so it means a lot. You never know if you're doing things right until other people tell you how they feel about the things you do.
Yeah.
So it's a relief to know that it's going okay so far, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited to see more of your series. And if you guys haven't already, please be sure to check out Move Me. I don't know if you want to pause and check it out or if you want to wait until the end, but definitely watch the rest of this video because we have a lot of exciting stuff we're going to go over.
Yes, definitely don't pause the video. I think it's just, I suppose I don't know if my series is the cup of tea for everyone. I think at the start I was a bit worried about it being a bit too medical, not really being quite appealing to a lot of people. But then I suppose the people who were looking for a story like that would have liked it anyways. So keep in mind it's kind of a medical story, so hopefully that isn't sending you back.
That's another interesting thing that we could talk about your story, because I don't think I've seen any. Maybe I just haven't read enough Canvas stories. I don't think I've really seen any other medical Canvas stories yet. So it feels very fresh, even though you'll see medical stories a lot in TV. It still manages to feel like super fresh to me.
Yeah, and I think this is why I made it to begin with, is that I'm a big fan of all medical stories, of all kind of surgeon stories. I've watched Grey's Anatomy, I've watched Scrubs, all these, stories set in hospital settings, and I've always been like, but they're all following the doctors and nobody's following any of the other professions. And in real life, you do find out a lot of the time that people don't even know that all these other professions are in hospitals, and that they don't even know what they do. So I thought it'd be an interesting twist to the story, that it wouldn't be doctors, and surgeons that are the main characters of this love story, but it's gonna be physiotherapists. Yeah, I suppose I think if you've read my story, you probably have noticed that I'm inserting a lot of kind of educational bits at the end, and I was again not quite sure if that was the right thing, because in the end of the day, I wanted people who actually work in healthcare and came across this comic to be able to look at it and say, oh yeah, that's fairly accurate, or oh yeah, that's definitely the way things happen at work. So I wanted to include a little bit more information for people who might be confused by the things happening in the episodes. And I found at the start that, you know, I wasn't quite sure if people were understanding what things are being used, or what, purpose certain actions had. So introduce the bonus bits at the end.
Personally, I think that it's been very helpful because even though I do, well, I don't think I do, but I have watched a lot of like medical shows. Like they're all the stuff that I've seen is like US based, so it's like a little bit different. So it's helped me follow along a lot better, and I feel like I'm already getting more used to it.
Ooh, then I'm doing something right then.
Yeah.
That's a relief.
When did you first get into art?
Well, let me see. I think I've always been drawing since I can remember. It's one of those things that when you ask artists, they all tell you, oh, ever since I was little, and it was more or less the case with me as well. The very first thing I can recall drawing was a crayon drawing of the Powerpuff Girls. I think I must have been between 7 and 10, so ever since then, I'll say. But I think I started drawing more later on in my teens, when I started watching more TV, and it was mostly kind of just like fan art, lots of Supernatural fan art, lots of Jean Woo fan art, things like that. All the embarrassing stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say ever since then I've been really interested in art. And you know what, at the time I did consider maybe going into art after high school. My parents were really, really supportive of it too, but I felt like I had equal interest in art and in sciences, so I wasn't quite sure which way to go. And I think in the end I did, consider going into sciences and then still doing art in my spare time. And that's kind of what I ended up doing so far. And to be honest, I really don't have any regrets in that sense. I feel like it has allowed me to have the best of both worlds. Doing art with no pressure of earning money from it, and also having a career I really enjoy and find satisfying.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit more about making that decision? Because I remember I was like a freshman in college in just 4 years ago in like 2016. And that was the hardest decision that I think I've ever had to make, because I also had that thing where I was good at sciences, so I felt like I should go into science, but I ended up choosing to major in art. So I'm really curious to hear more about that thought.
I think, I've always loved art in the sense of, I think my very first love for art came from animations, and to this day I still very much love animations. And I think maybe my background had something to do with it. So I come from fairly poor family, and growing up we did have quite lots of financial struggles and so on. So my parents had to take quite heavy manual jobs to support our family, and that ended up resulting in injuries, back pains, and so on. So I think until my very last year in high school, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do in between those two things. And I decided that it would be both more practical and both, more satisfying to pick a healthcare job that would allow me to help my family, but also is fairly, secure. And I always had the the confidence that I wouldn't let go of art and that I would be doing art anyways. So I thought that, I would suppose it was like a bet I made with myself that was, if you really want it, you still keep doing it, even if you're not studying it or if it's not your career. So I took that bet, and for the first few years in uni, I did wonder if I had made the right choice, because my program was very tough and I still was very much attracted to art. And the few people I met in uni that were doing art were, amazing people that seemed to do what they love. And, I had doubts as well, but once I graduated and went into the real world and was allowed to do, to actually work as a physio, things were entirely different, and I've loved every, moment of it. And if anything, that has allowed me to put more of my mental time in, in my free time, towards art. So it's been pretty good so far.
That sounds like it worked out well for you, and it also sounds very rewarding.
Yeah, I think so. I think, it does have its trade-off for sure. I think sometimes it's very difficult to come home and leave work at work, if it makes sense. You do still think about things. You do, things from work. You do still worry about the people that are waiting for you at work. And, sometimes the shifts could be really long, mentally and physically exhausting. So, there is a trade-off. And most of the time, I feel like if you're having a really busy week, there isn't really any time to do art afterwards, because, a lot of the days I just come home and I have dinner and I just crash on the couch or on the bed. And that's kind of me during the week. So no much time for art in that regard. And this is why I update so rarely as well.
It's actually really nice to hear this perspective, because I was going to say earlier, you don't hear that many people who have kind of done this. I don't know if you could say successfully is the right word, but like actually been able to follow through on keeping up with art while having such, I don't know if hectic's the right word, but like a busy life.
Yeah, I think I do sometimes get really jealous of all the other Canvas creators who do this full time, do their series full time. And, it always seems so amazing to be able to update very consistently every week. And, it's hard not to feel like you're lagging behind and like you're, doing a disservice to your readers. Everybody so far has been really nice to me, and I haven't really gotten any messages pestering me, oh, when are you going to update? But it is at the back of my mind that, sometimes I do have to take a really long stretches of time before I update with another episode, as I'm doing at the moment. So yeah, it does have its drawbacks. But I think if you like your story, you'll keep making it, and if people like your story too, they'll wait for you. If it, so I'm hoping my readers don't give up on me just yet.
Yeah, definitely. Like, honestly, reading your story, it feels worth the wait to me, so I wouldn't worry about that.
Oh gosh. It's interesting in the sense that this is meant to be a really slow burn story, very long one. And I'm just thinking about, how long would it take me to get to season 1 finale, to season 2, and so on. And hopefully it wouldn't take it wouldn't take more than 5 years to complete the story.
Oh, same.
Oh gosh.
But that seems to be the eternal struggle of Canvas creators, no matter what pace they're going at. Because I don't think I've talked to a single person who said that their story is going as fast as they want it to.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I suppose, I mean, that is kind of the benefit and the curse of webcomics, isn't it? Is that they take time to make. But then again, you're also able to see the progress with each update and with time. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, it's almost like magic. You're seeing someone improve in real time.
Because you're forcing yourself to really slow down on how quickly you can do the writing. I mean, like, not necessarily do it, but like execute the writing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time in between episodes, or even working on episodes. Well, really in between writing sessions for me, that I just spend just sort of like living in the story instead of like rushing through it, which is a strange experience.
Oh yeah, I think it's like one of those things that if you know a cool part is coming up in your story, you really want to get there, and you know the either the filler episodes or the build-up episodes, you're just, you know, so impatient with. At least it is this way for me, and I think it's quite difficult to do something like that in romance, because if you want a romance to feel real, you have to take the time to really build it up, which means you have to be so patient. And I'm here just thinking, oh, come on, we get together, fall in love. It would be great.
Yeah, definitely. And for romance, you usually have to wait a little bit longer for them to get together. There's no more story.
Getting together in the second episode and weddings in the third episode. That's it, folks.
That's it.
Romance complete.
Romance complete. Oh, that's something we could talk about a little bit too, that I don't think I wrote in my interview questions for you. But how do you do your writing?
I'm probably the worst person to ask about writing, mostly because I hate writing in the sense of writing scripts. I have a friend who's done several webcomics on Webtoon so far, and they're like great at writing scripts. I've seen them, they're very detailed, establishing shots and everything. And I really struggled doing so at the start. I think I started with just doing thumbnails, but then I also wanted to make sure that I'm planting things ahead of time to foreshadow certain things. So I started making a beat sheet. So I have a document in which I write all kind of the main plot points I want to hit, and then I manage to spread them within the amount of episodes I think it would take, with leaving some leeway for, you know, a surprise episode that I might come up with later down the line. But I never really write the dialogue in advance. I just have a basic outline of what kind of needs to happen at that point in the story, and then improvise the dialogue as I'm doing the thumbnails.
Yeah.
That's kind of the maximum of writing that I'll ever probably do. I'm like the worst at writing, to be honest.
Yeah, I always change. I do scripts, but I always change the dialogue pretty heavily in the final version.
Yeah, I think, oh gosh, how many times have I had to just include or remove a panel because I've decided to change the dialogue last minute as I'm doing the coloring, and I'm like, no, this is not gonna work.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the worst. It's like a curse, I think. People who can write scripts are like superheroes. I'm absolutely impressed by anybody who can write a detailed script in advance.
My scripts aren't too accurate though, because I always end up adding like 10 or 20 panels. So I'll go in and I'll think it's like a 30 panel episode, and it'll end up like 50.
That's amazing. I've seen the length of your episodes and they're like so long, and I'm like, amazing, how do you do it?
Well, I just made a video about this. I'm gonna actually cut back on the episode length for a while because I
Yeah,
want to
I saw
redo the
that.
beginning, and
Yeah.
I want to get a buffer. But
Yeah, oh gosh, yes.
I'm
I think, buffers are amazing. This is one of the big mistakes I think I made before, as I started my series is I think I should have been a bit more patient and build a buffer in advance. Everybody told me to do so and I just didn't. And now I'm kind of suffering for it. So I think it's it's a really good choice to just kind of slow down and build one.
yeah. I think it depends on your personality type a little bit too, though, because like
Mm-hmm.
even though I wish I would have done a buffer before I started, I would
Mm-hmm.
have totally psyched myself out and then not posted if I made a buffer.
Oh gosh. I suppose, and you can also fall in the trap where you do the same 3 episodes and you keep redoing them because your art keeps improving.
Yes,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah,
That's
yeah. I've seen few people do that thing where they're like, oh, I'm still working on my art. I need to get these 10 episodes looking perfect, but by the time you finish the 10 episode, you've gotten a lot better now, so you're constantly having to go back and redo things, and that's never going to change. That's always going to be the case.
yeah, it can be really endless.
But yeah, three episodes you were saying you're doing. Is that the prologue episodes?
Um, I want to redo the third episode first because I've always felt
Mm.
like that was my least favorite episode.
Oh,
And then I like the prologues, the art I did for the prologues, but I did them in another software, so they're in too low of a resolution.
oh, I see.
But what else was I gonna say? I definitely wanted to. I don't know if I want to redo all the art for it because I'm not
Mm.
sure I want to redo the storybook art for it, but I want
Yeah.
to at least reformat it because it takes a while to
Oh.
get used to the scrolly webtoon thing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I remember a few years ago I thought that I was gonna start trying to make a webtoon and I didn't end up doing it the right way at all. I just ended up doing regular pages and posting them onto the scroll format in a batch. And that was definitely not how you do the webtoon format. Um, it's so much nicer now that I feel like if you've done your webtoon for a little while, you get so much more natural in terms of composing your episodes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has been quite good. Um, but yeah, I I quite like the webtoon format. I think maybe because it does remind you of a movie. Because when you swipe quite fast, you're mostly focusing your attention to kind of the middle of your screen, and it's just like the panels um going through it like in a movie. So I think it's quite nice.
Yeah, I
Um,
totally agree with that. I wanted to be a storyboard artist originally when I graduated college. I graduated
oh,
basically exactly a year ago. I think technically I graduated a little later, but exactly a year ago I was done with my last class.
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. But then
So
I
what stopped you from going for it?
um a lot of stuff like my art really wasn't ready, so I was applying to jobs and I wasn't even getting interviews.
I
Um
see.
what else?
You
And
can
then
definitely do it though. I believe in you.
thank you. Yeah. And then COVID happened, and that's when I started this story because I gave up
Oh
on
yeah.
looking for jobs because it was like, oh, the world's gonna end anyway, so why am I gonna worry about this?
Oh, that's awesome though you made Webtoon your job, which is, the dream, isn't it?
Well, it's not really my job. It's just the thing I do because I don't have. In the U.S., they pause student loans,
Mm.
so I haven't actually had to pay anything back yet. So I've just been chilling.
Oh, student loans is scary.
But I hope I can make it my job. I've been acting like it's my job. And just hoping people will take me seriously.
Well, dress for the job you want. So I think you've been doing really well so far, and I do think that your comic has a really beautiful art and has a heart in there. So there's plenty for readers to find in it.
Thank you. This is like the interview where you guys can't see it, but I'm like blushing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just attacking your comic. It's so good.
You're attacking me with kindness.
Oh, I think this is one of the big surprises that I've gotten since starting making comics is how lovely the Canvas community is, both the readers and the other creators.
Yeah.
So I think that has been really great. And before I started posting comics, I was always very worried that readers would be very critical and that other creators might either judge my lack of experience or so on. But I've met so many wonderful creators that have been a huge support network so far, and all the readers have been absolutely amazing, and they keep motivating me to make more, which is spectacular. Is the most I can really ask for. So that absolutely blew my mind when I started making webcomics.
Yeah, every day I'm genuinely surprised how kind and thoughtful people are. Like, I know it's because like my series is still kind of getting established, but I haven't really had any truly negative interactions yet. Maybe like a couple grumpy people on YouTube, but like, that's kind of what you sign up for.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely the case, yeah. And you never know what people really think about what you do, because you're so busy creating this, and most of us create that in isolation, in our rooms and in our heads. So it's difficult to tell what the world would have to say about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Until you post it. Yeah.
That's part of why I think if I made a buffer at the beginning, it would have definitely psyched me out thing. Because it took me several weeks before I really got any readers who I didn't already know.
Yeah.
So it just felt kind of weird, like I'm just throwing myself out into the void and nothing's happening.
Yeah, I think I always get very shy when talking to people who know me in real life about my hobby. And I've had few occasions where I would see people on my webcomic that are people I know in real life, and I would be like, it's so scary, but it's so lovely, and everybody's being so nice about it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like whenever my mom's like, I want to see what you're doing, I'm like, it's not that bad, but I don't want to show you.
Oh gosh. Yeah, my family's been really supportive, but they can't read a word of my comic anyways, so that kind of reassures me a tiny bit. But yeah.
Yeah.
My
I'll keep going.
No, it just my family doesn't really, there is no other member of my family that speaks English, so that has been the one benefit of being like a foreigner, if it makes sense, is that I can just publish things in English and my family would have no clue what it says. So has been very funny. They're very supportive, even though they have no idea what the story is about.
Yeah. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was I wanted to hear about like influences on your art style, and also like how you really studied art, because you didn't go to school for art.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, I suppose the answer to this question would be very much related to something I mentioned earlier, that, you know, I loved animation growing up. And I think, you know, a lot of my influences end up being more animation based than actual comic based. And it doesn't really help that you know, where I'm from, we don't really have a huge comic publishing industry. So there were very few comics out there for young readers to get access to. I think there was only one, and that is probably the one that most prominently had influence on me. It's called Witch. It's made by Alessandro Barbucci and Barbara Canepa, and it's about 5 girls who are school friends that suddenly get superpowers, and they're now the guardians of the veil of Kandrakar, and they have all these wonderful adventures. But the heart of the story really is about, you know, friendship. So love that comic. It's amazing. I used to collect it all the time, and that is probably the primary influence on my art. And to this day, I still very much like drawing fan art for it. And then similarly, a lot of my animation influences are very anime based. So I was a big sucker for Sailor Moon. I used to love that.
Yeah.
I used to love a lot. Yeah, you know, you can sense a pattern here, probably. You know, beautiful girl friendships. But yeah, another one is probably Shaman King, the anime.
Yeah.
I love that show. It's amazing. And yeah, I think they made me want to draw when I was younger, and that's kind of what I did. I tried to get as close to those characters as I could. And I mostly used just printer paper and pencil, and you know, I didn't really have any fancy tools, and I didn't get a computer until I was maybe 16 or something. So digital art was out of my realm for a long while. So it was mostly anime fan art that I used to do. And then when I got into, you know, different TV shows, I tried to do more fan art. And I went through more kind of realistic stage where I tried to draw more realistic portraits of these characters. And only after I got into uni did I buy a tablet, and I went to my first Comic Con, and I fell in love with comics. I think then, I think that was a big turning point for me. Up until that point, I had maybe a couple of comics, a few X-Men volumes, and I loved them a lot, but I never really thought that I could make something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks mind-blowing. It looks so beautiful on the pages, and you're like, there's no possible way for me to be able to create that ever. But after that Comic-Con, when you see artists draw in real time, and you see some of their sketches, and you see some of their, you know, books, it just got me thinking, I really want to give it a try. I didn't even care about being good at it. I just wanted to have something similar. And this is when I explored the idea of maybe making webcomics. And I started reading more webcomics online. I think at the time I was mostly on Tapas, and that's where I would kind of find most of the webcomics I read.
Wow. Yeah. We definitely had a lot of like similar influences growing up.
Oh really? Were you also a fan of Sailor Moon?
I didn't watch Sailor Moon growing up because I was like, I think I started getting into watching like dubbed anime series a little while after they stopped airing it.
No.
Because I used to watch all my dubbed anime on like 4Kids TV. You know,
Oh
like
yeah,
back before like
yeah. Oh, I love that.
yeah. But I was
Yeah,
super into Witch too.
oh, really? That's amazing. It almost feels like the secret fan club, I have to say. Every time that I speak to another artist about Witch, it's almost like it's this small thing that people don't really know about. So they're like, oh, yes, Witch, you know? So it's always very, very special when you meet someone who's also like watched or read Witch when they were younger. I feel like that's something that wasn't a huge thing, maybe like Winx Club.
Yeah.
So maybe fewer people knew about it.
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of weird for me to get into because what I used to do is my mom used to take me to this like used bookstore.
Mm.
And so I'd buy like a mix of the like novelizations and the graphic novels, but
Oh,
I'd buy them like out of order. So I had to kind of like piece together what was going on because I read them out of order and I don't think I ever read all of them, but I was
oh
super into
gosh.
them.
Oh yeah, I definitely know what you mean about not reading all of them. I think in my country they stopped publishing them before they got to the end.
Mm.
So I had to kind of find them online and try and catch up on them there. But I think the UK started publishing the comics into graphic novels a couple of years ago. So I've started buying and collecting them in English since it's very difficult to find them in my native language. They never really had them collected into graphic novels. They were always kind of just in a single issues
Mm-hmm.
format. So very difficult finding old magazines anywhere. So I was super happy when I saw them. Um, but I'm still trying to catch up on the storylines. I don't think I've actually ended up reading the end yet. So something to look forward to.
Yeah, definitely. That's
I'll
another.
let you know how it finishes.
Yeah, that's just another interesting thing about that era, though, because like now you could just find any series easily online, but like back then, like you had to just
Oh yeah.
see what you bumped into and then sort of guess the rest.
Oh gosh, yes. I think a lot of the anime that I watched when I was younger was it was transmitted on Cartoon Network, which at the time in my country wasn't dubbed. So what
Mm.
we ended up doing is watching it in English. And as you can guess, at 7 years old, if English is not your native language, you just kind of have to piece things together by looking at the pictures and figuring out what the episode is about.
Yeah.
And yeah, you end up just watching random episodes, and it's so bizarre being an adult and being able to just find them in order and being able to watch them all at the same time. Um, that's crazy.
Yeah. It's like it's totally different from talking to younger people now cuz like basically all they remember is being able to get any show they want whenever they want.
I know that's they'll never know the struggle.
The struggle.
Oh gosh, but
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Did you have any other like shows or like movies or comics that influenced you growing up?
I think yeah. I mean, I suppose the the very first comic after which that I read was the X-Men. Um, and it's the Ultimate X-Men. I know lots of people don't like that one, but that I think that did create a big curiosity in terms of um, creating comics with the same dynamics. It's
Yeah.
one of the most dynamically drawn comic I've ever seen, the Ultimate Saga, and I think that definitely influenced on what I feel about paneling your comics. And to be honest, even today, I feel like my panels could be a lot more dynamic and they could be a lot more expressive.
Mm.
But you know, hopefully with more practice, things are going to improve even more. So that was a big one. And I think, it's difficult to remember. At the time, I would watch anything, to be honest. I watched a lot of galactic football. That was a very bizarre one to be a fan of.
Oh, what's that about?
I don't know if you watched this. I think anything that used to be on the Jetix channel was a big thing for me. And it was like, you follow this football team that is participating in galactic football. And it was mostly 3D drawn animation, but made to look like it was 2D. And they had some fantastic kicks, and I'm not even a fan of football, but I was a fan of that particular show, so that was very weird for me. And your general Kids Next Door, type of the classic Cartoon Network shows were a big thing for me. And yeah, I think it's difficult to say, because I sometimes look at the comics that I draw and the stories that I tell, and I see influences entirely different than the ones that I thought were my influences.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think, for example, the more I ended up reading as an adult, the more I realized that the stories that I've read, like classical novels, have installed these ideas in my head that then I wanted to share. Like, I feel like a lot of Jane Austen's novels have been an influence to me. A lot of romantic, mangas have had an influence on me in terms of thinking about atmosphere and events and environments being part of the story and so on. Though I've probably not had as much of a chance to put that in practice, but I found that when I design my stories, I do think about those things quite a lot.
Yeah, me too, definitely. I have a lot of older stories that I like to sort of pull from. Like, I don't know if it necessarily influences my story right now, but definitely my world building. Like, I really love a Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, I've been rereading it while drawing, and it's just so good. Or right now I'm reading I'm sure I'm gonna pronounce this wrong, but like Anna Karenina. I don't know how to pronounce it. And it's
the Russian novels are amazing. I have to say, they're very dramatic and very, very final almost in their story. So that's a really good choice of a book. It's a nice book.
Yeah. I've been a little bit scared away from them because they're just so long. But I'm like, I have them as audio books, and I'm just working for so long every week. Like, I have the time now, and they're just so good.
Yeah. Oh gosh, the first time I saw War and Peace, and I was like, no, that's not gonna happen. It is too long. Oh gosh. But yeah, I think, reading has been a nice way for me to think about storytelling without having had the same maybe experience in making comics. I think you can pull so much from just written books a lot of the time in terms of building your story structure and so on. And I think recently I've been rereading Persuasion, which is one of my favorite Jane Austen novels, and it's just very the way that she handles guilt and disappointment and regret about your past choices is so delicate and so thorough that I think makes me think, okay, how can I use this in my own format without making the messages of my story very obvious and very in your face.
Yeah.
So, it's been quite good to use that. I feel like I've said that phrase a lot today. It's been very good. You can tell that I'm not a very good speaker in terms of stating my opinions. I apologize for that.
Oh, don't worry about it. I feel like that like all the time, every single YouTube video I make.
Oh no.
But you just gotta do it sometimes if it's that important to you, you know? Just gotta say it.
Yeah. Just have to say it.
But yeah, I definitely find it like it has a way bigger influence on pacing my story than I thought looking back. Because most of the stuff I read is kind of like slow to start. But I feel like a lot of webtoons in general like start off with like, there's a big explosion and the world's gonna explode and there's love interest, but the love interest might also explode. Like, you know? There's a very dramatic beginning.
Oh god, yeah. And it's I also think it's very, for me at least, it was very difficult to gauge if something, what is really the leeway in between making something slow and making something boring, because I do think that taking things slow is better.
Yeah.
But also I've been very worried about making things boring, if it makes sense.
I feel like I've talked about this with some of my like friends before, because I'm a little self-conscious about it. But like the thing that your story does well that I think really keeps it driving forward is just that the characters are already so strong. Like I feel like I could watch them do anything and I would just be entertained.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really big compliment. I think I suppose because I started the comic with a very clear idea of Kim is definitely hating Phil, and giving people the her side of the story. I think that did establish very much what Kim stands for, what her temper is like, and what she's likely to be acting, how she's going to be acting in the future. And I think from the next couple of episodes, we're going to see a little bit more about Phil's side of the story. And it's a delicate balance between making people understand the conflict, but also making sure that people don't find either of the main characters irredeemable.
Yeah.
But I think, that would come with time and more episodes, and hopefully things are gonna stay in that golden middle. But yeah, thank you. It's really good to hear. I think I'm excited to see people learn a little bit more about Phil and, build their own impression on which side they should take, or is there anyone in the wrong actually, or are both of them in the wrong? And it's fun building that type of conflict, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what hearing you say that, I think that's part of why your characters just feel so nice to watch, because it feels like you could analyze everything from like multiple sides or multiple angles, and not everything is just in like black and white.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed reading the comments on some of the more conflict-based episodes, because then you see a lot of people say, "Oh, I hate Phil. Yes, Kim, you go ahead, girl." And then you see people who are like, "Well, Phil was a boy, people change and so on. Give him a chance," and things like that. So I can already see that people are, there are people on both ends of the story. And I think as the story reveals more, it would be even more difficult to take aside, I think. And that's going to be kind of the fun of that first season, is building that back and forth, and, you know, who do you like? Do you like them both? Is one of them in the wrong? You know, and how much you're willing to forgive. I think that's going to be so much fun. And I hope people don't hate me too much for some of the episodes coming along.
Well, I'm really excited to read them.
Oh. Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be so much fun, and I'm definitely going to enjoy seeing some of people's reactions for that. And that's one of my favorite thing, I think, is seeing people's reactions to the episodes. So the comment section's been probably my favorite place so far, and you know, it's quite fun. I think there was one episode in particular that everybody was just commenting Taylor Swift songs and so on, and I was like, that is so funny. That is, you know, so spicy. So I really have been enjoying this. It's making things a little less isolated in terms of, you know, I make comics, but also I'm not alone within having opinion on that story. So
yeah. At first, like, posting a series, it feels sort of like you're just throwing out a message in a bottle, and now I feel like we've sort of like evolved our technology a little bit, and like now getting reactions kind of feels like getting back like a telegraph or something.
Oh god, yeah. It's like being in a room full of people who are watching the movie you've made, but they don't know that you're listening in. That sounded that actually sounded so bad. That sounded very creepy, but it's in a non-creepy way. It's in a consensual way. You know, people leave you a message. So that's quite nice. That's quite nice. Yeah. And I think so far I haven't managed to, make someone hate either of my characters too much. So that's been good. Though I did run a poll recently on my social media that was, what did people feel about Phil in the last episode, as it leaves on a bit of a cliffhanger. And the choices were, is Phil an innocent boy, neutral, or is he being a creep? So you still get the small percentage thinking Phil is a creep, even though he's just there. So that's been really fun. I think I really like playing on those different opinions.
So as like a follow-up of the writing question, so looking at like the overarching story, do you already have like most of the story in mind, or are you more of like a discovery writer where like every week you're like, oh, I'm gonna find out with you?
I think I see, this is probably a writing sin, because every single writing video or book I've ever read always tells you, know your start and know your ending. And so far, I know my start, I know my middle, kind of, and there is plenty of space for the ending. So I don't have a firm ending in mind, though my genre kind of works against me in that sense, since this is a romance story. The options are either they get together or they don't get together. So it's, the ending in that sense would be very 50-50. And I do know which one they'll go for, but it's about how they get there that I think is the most exciting part of being a romance comic.
Yeah.
While you have your mystery and trailers, you're always wondering, oh, how is this going to end? With romance stories, most of the time you kind of have an expectation of what the ending would be like, but it's always about how you get there, and would you actually want them to get there by the end? Would you like the characters enough to want that happy ending for them or not?
Yeah, definitely. That's really...
It must be quite different from doing a more mystery supernatural comic.
Oh yeah, like I have an ending in mind. I know the beginning. I know the background. But then how I get there, I'm still working on that.
It's the big question.
Yeah, my characters want to know too.
Oh gosh, yeah. And I mean, there are quite few mysteries in your comic as well, so that's exciting. It's like chocolate eggs for the readers. So like along the way you find a couple, and it's, you know, it's just so nice.
Yeah.
And I think I have a big appreciation for mysteries and supernatural stories and just generally kind of thriller stories. So I really like reading comics like that, I think. And part of it is that freedom of, you know, what is going to happen next. You can come up with some absolutely, you know, incredible possibilities.
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting to hear you talk about it as if it's a mystery comic, because I always think of it like a mystery comic, but I don't feel like I've put that much of the mystery in, so I'm like, it's great that you're picking up on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's quite a few mysteries so far that I'm really intrigued by, and I'm like, interesting. How are they all gonna tie together? Yeah, it's just making me more excited for what's to come, I think.
All right, so now I'm curious. How did you discover Webtoon?
I think at the time I was, you know, at the start I was using Tapas quite a lot for posting and reading lots of webcomics, and occasionally you see creators who would branch out and mirror to webtoons. So this is how I became aware of the app, but at the start I wasn't very keen on making the transition. And I think one of the things that kept me at Tapas at the time was the fact that you had your own user profile, so it was very easy to interact with people and was easy to post community messages and so on. But then as time went on, I found out that there were so many amazing series on Webtoons that were, you know, exclusive. So I was like, I want to check what the whole deal is about. You know, what are all these comics like? And I think one of the first ones I started reading on Webtoons was Girls of Wilds, and that absolutely blew my mind. So I you know, easily made an account in Webtoons and started reading a lot of comics on Webtoons. And I think as time went on, I had a lot more reasons to come back to Webtoons than to stay on Tapas. And sadly, as time, you know, progressed, I used my Tapas account less and less, and I think nowadays I don't even check it anymore. So I'm mostly on Webtoons now, and you know, there were so many new series coming and keeping me there, I think, you know. So it's been a great platform so far. Yeah, and I think what I like telling people is that I am predominantly a reader and a creator second, because if I have to choose if I can only read comics or only make comics until the end of my days, I would choose to always read comics. There are just so many amazing, mind-blowing series out there that, you know, I think would be a shame not to read those. But yeah, Webtoons has been like the place I call my comic home for maybe a couple of years now. So it's been an amazing find.
So when did you start posting comics online then?
What I think I tried making a web comic years ago. The name was Crass, and I started making it on Tapas. I think it was around 2016 or 17, and I made 12 pages, and then I stopped. And believe me when I say it, the art was atrocious. The art, the character development, everything was so bad. And I think to this day, I still give it as an example of, my bad comic art. But then again, you just grow. And I think one of the big things that stopped me from making comics at the time was that I really wasn't ready. I think I knew I wanted to try making comics, but as more and more people started reading my comic, I became painfully aware of the fact that I had no plan, I had no plot developed, my art wasn't that great, and that just kind of created more insecurities in me. So I stopped posting comics online publicly, but I still very much kept reading comics, and I still very much still drew and made illustrations that I would maybe post on Instagram and so on. And I think recently when the Canvas short story contest came along, I was just like, this is my opportunity to make something, to finish it in a short time, to keep practicing and to tell a story. So I just took it and I jumped in, and it was amazing. So that made me want to make more comics.
Could you talk more about what was it like to do the short story contest?
Yeah, of course. I think I saw the announcement before April that there would be a short comic contest, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna take part in this one. So initially I started developing a different story for that contest, and it was a love story in 3 episodes. But as time went on, I ended up not really having time to draw that story. So before I knew it, it was the end of, I think, July, and I hadn't drawn a single episode. So I was like, oh no.
Oh, when did the contest end again? I already forgot.
I think the official deadline was the 1st of August.
Oh,
so
wait.
So I was 3 weeks away from the deadline finish, and I was like, oh no, I've not done anything. So I went back to this thriller mystery supernatural story I've had in my mind for quite a few years, and I never really ended up, fully developing it. I think at the time I was thinking, oh, I'll maybe do a whole graphic novel on this idea, but I realized that that's probably not going to happen, especially if I keep saving these ideas somewhere aside and never actually trying to do them. So I was like, this story would be great as a short story, and I just went into it. So I completed 1 episode in 1 week, 1 episode in the other week, and the last episode I think I completed 2 days before the deadline.
Wow.
So I was like, I just made it through the deadline, and I think I was so proud of that comic, not necessarily for being the best thing in the world, but for finally starting a story and then finishing a story, as in, providing something for people to read in a cohesive way, and then, being able to say, I've done this story, I tried my best with the time I had, and now it's done. And it's, it was so satisfying for once to make something and to complete it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really good time, and I think around that time I met a lot of Canvas creators as well that were, also taking part in that contest. And I feel like that contest was actually quite popular. Quite a lot of people took part in it.
Yeah, for sure.
I was so convinced that nobody even read my comic because I updated it so late and there were so many entries. So it's, it was very appreciated for whoever read my comic, Thank you guys if you're listening. Very appreciated.
Yeah.
Um,
I totally would not have guessed that you jumped in pretty late into the competition to work on the series on your entry because it was really good.
oh gosh, yeah, definitely. I jumped. I did the story in the last 3 weekends before the deadline, because most of the time throughout the week I was still working and I could find only a little bit of time to do anything. So I have to say, bless my partner for being such an understanding person. And there were so many days during the weekend where I would just work from the morning till evening quite late. And, he was super supportive. He was like, yeah, go get it, complete that comic, it'd be great. And didn't seem to mind that, I wasn't free to interact for a little while. So bless him for being there for me.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad we got to read such an amazing story. And if you guys haven't already read Chris's short story entry, I forgot the title. What's the title?
It's called Mind.
Mind. Please go check it out. It's really good.
Thank you guys. Yeah, it was a very interesting one for me, because it was a story that was in its heart a mystery thriller in a medical setting, but it was also very much a supernatural story or a magical realism story that I haven't had a huge experience with creating. But I had lots of fun with it, and I think I would definitely try something similar in the future.
Yeah. So I saw that you actually were one of the runners up in the mind blowing category. Is that right?
Yeah, that was a huge surprise for me. As I said earlier, I didn't actually think that anybody read the comic. I think by the end of the competition, there were maybe 40 subscribers who had read and liked the story enough to, stay. So I was super surprised when I saw it in that category as well. I can remember it very clearly. I was um, going to work, and then I just checked my phone where the winners were announced. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna check who the runner ups are. There's some great series. I might be able to read some of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the very end, the very last comic was actually my comics. I had to take a double take, and I was like, am I seeing wrong? Am I looking at
Is this all a lie?
Is this all a lie? Am I looking at my own kind of page? What's happening here? And then it actually was listed there, and I was absolutely mind blown by that. I did not expect that anybody from Webtoons had read my comic, never mind thought that it was a good enough comic to list in there. So that was a huge surprise.
Yeah. So, did that have any influence on you making your current comic?
I think, I mean, I think making Mind was different in a lot of ways in terms of what the story is about. But it did make me think that I did enjoy the medical setting type of comics a lot, and I did enjoy making one because that gave me the advantage of having some experience in the medical setting and being able to set the world in a fairly realistic way. So I was like, I really just want to make a different type of story, but also in a medical setting, and then make it a little bit different, a little bit more light-hearted, a little bit more, slice of lifey, if it makes sense. So that kind of was my thought process when I was thinking, what should my next comic be? Because what I really knew for sure after making the short story was that I wanted to make a longer comic. Once I had completed the short one, I felt like the pacing of a longer one would be a lot more difficult. So I really wanted to work on my storytelling and telling a longer comic that had a lot more pacing needs, if it makes. Yeah.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Like, when I started off my comic, I definitely had like, I was originally going to enter the short story contest, and then I kept pushing it off and pushing it off, and I never did it, even though I wrote all the story for it.
You've done what I did, except I stupidly changed my mind at the end.
Yeah, but like, I just kept thinking of the story that I'm working on now as like practice, so that helped get rid of some of the pressure of working on it, I guess. Even
would
though
you enter a short story contest if one comes in next year?
yeah, I definitely want to, which is part of why I want to get this buffer. Because I have a couple of ideas for stories that, if they fit the contest theme, I definitely want to try. Because I feel like my series is going to take such a long time if I ever finish it, that I want to try having something that I've actually completed. Because this is my first comic, my first real one anyway.
Yeah. Have you been making comics for a long time?
I'd say no. Because when I was a little kid, I'd make like little things, but they were like basically like one-off stories about me and my friends. And I mean like a really little kid, like first grade, like very young. But like I really wanted to be a concept artist for a while in high school, but I didn't want to tell anyone because I was like, I can't tell anyone I want to be an artist. And then I really wanted to work in animation and hopefully have my own show someday.
Oh, that's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah. And I was very influenced by manga growing up, but I very quickly came to a realization that it just wasn't something possible for me to do. So I shouldn't even really dream of doing it. But now I feel like with Webtoon it's kind of possible, though not in the exact same way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what was it like working on more of like a thriller or like a psychological comic versus now romance?
Oh goodness. I think with the work on mind, the things that I found the easiest was structuring the story, because it was forced to be in that, short story format between 3 and 5 episodes. You just had to cut the fat. You just had to boil it down to what you really need to say in only so many panels. So I found that the format itself really helped me make the story better. And I also found that because it was, so psychological, and it was this supernatural event happening to this one girl who is going through the trauma of losing someone and not wanting to let people down, it was a very single character, based story.
Yeah.
So I could really afford to just focus on her and her subjective experience. And I found this a lot easier than having to balance a cast of characters. And even though at the moment I feel like with Move Me, I've properly only introduced Kim, I'm definitely having a lot of thoughts on what the larger part of the cast is going through at each moment. So I've had to do a lot of planning to be able to accurately handle what each of them is thinking at each moment, and how that would influence how they would act. And because I find that romance is a very much a subtle genre in terms of how you develop your story, because you both have to think about your characters, each character's mental state, but also how that is going to influence each of theirs, actions. But also they are in a professional setting where for example, if you wanted to shout at someone, you might think twice before you do that. So you have to do things in a more subtle way.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, thinking about writing Move Me has been a lot more difficult than Mind. And because, you know, romances are all about relationships and impressions and expectations and, you know, changing your mind, I think there's a lot more character play in there.
Definitely.
So I'm still trying to find my way on how to do that the right way. But you know, I'm trying my best so far. So I think I haven't entirely ruined it yet. I think things have been quite fun, but I'm still very cautious of under or overdoing it. So I'm, you know, trying to balance things out.
So then how do you go about keeping track of all of your character stuff?
So what I do is you know, with my general outline of things, I have 3 different columns. And I have the middle column is where the plot happens. And the 2 columns on each side are my characters and what their impressions are after each interaction. So I'm having to kind of bullet point and keep track on what they're all thinking and feeling at each time, though I'm sure there is an easier way to do that. I think I probably haven't found it yet, and find that quite helpful. I think, you know, once you understand where each character is coming from, it's easy to see how differently they can see the same events. For example, if Phil finds that a certain interaction is just playful, Kim might find it incredibly insulting, based on what her interpretation is of his character. And I think that's kind of also the fun part of things. For example, if you've read Pride and Prejudice, the big fun really is, you know, finding out, are you really right about what you think about that other person? And, you know, if you're not, what does that mean about them and their subjective experience?
Yeah. It's been a while since I read Pride and Prejudice. I've had to read it a couple of times, I think, in high school. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely know what you're saying. Book. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I love books like that that force you to look at things from someone else's perspective. And I do like books that make me think, am I being wrong? You know, am I right for having that impression of this person? You know, what could have happened that has made them do that other than what I'm already assuming? And I think that's the best part of assumptions, and generally that trope of bringing characters from enemies to lovers is, you know, what are your impressions, and are you wrong or are you right about your impressions, and people proving you wrong. I think that's so much fun.
Yeah, that definitely ties in with just how dynamic your characters feel already, just at the start of your story. Yeah. Could you talk about because it sounds like a lot of the general characters building and like the vibe also comes from like thumbnailing. Could you talk about your thumbnailing process at all?
Yeah, of course. The way I approach each episode is, after I have the summary for what needs to happen in the episode, I just open Procreate on my iPad and I start very loosely thumbnailing. And I think the way I approach things is, I just want to get general impression out, and I am less concerned with what looks anatomically correct or right. And I think in terms of just generally thumbnailing each episode, a lot of it is influenced by my love for cinema, I suppose.
Yeah.
A big part of my, love for storytelling comes from my love for cinematography. So I spend a significant amount of time watching movie analysis, watching different movies, taking screenshots of my favorite kind of moments in terms of cinematography, and then trying to recreate some of those in a sketchbook, and trying to keep the general silhouettes and contrast faithful to the screenshot, rather than make sure to fully render it. So I think I've tried to do that, though I don't know how successfully. I think there's always room for improvement in anything I do. So I've not reached that peak yet that I wish I did, but I'm I suppose trying to make things different, each panel different than the one that came before it. But yeah, I think that's my general way of tackling thumbnails, and yeah, I do think you have some really great thumbnails as well in your comic. And I like how you've definitely embraced the vertical scroll. I've seen some really good full panels that fully utilize the vertical scroll. I think I'm still trying to get used to that, and I still keep my panels fairly narrow.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also a really huge fan of like cinematography because I wanted to get into storyboarding. I actually have you seen the movie Parasite?
Oh no, this is still on my to watch list, but I've heard it's amazing.
Oh my gosh, you totally have to watch it. It's so good.
And that's definitely on my list. I'll make sure to speed the process along.
The cinematography in it is absolutely amazing. And I bought the storyboard book.
Wow.
And
I didn't even know they had one.
Yeah. The director did all the storyboards himself. And if you look through them, the way everything's formatted, it almost looks like a webtoon. So when I have a specific shot that I want and I get stuck, I'll check the book and I'll see if he did something similar. And then I'll just try to let it like influence me, you know?
Yeah, I think this is one of the best things about loving movies and loving cinematography, is that after a while, when you think about your stories, you almost see them in that same kind of format in your head. And I think this does really help when you're making a webtoon, when you're making a comic like that, because the way I used to do my stories before was I would see them in my head as a movie, then I was gonna do a storyboard in my notebook, but it would be in the same vertical format as a webtoon. So actually the difference was very minute in terms of how I would approach that now. So it's pretty much the same. But yeah, Parasite, I haven't really seen it. I've had quite a few movies on my to watch list. I have The Lighthouse as well, the one with Robert Pattinson and
I want to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So it's definitely on my list as well. There are some really good movies the last few years that I haven't gotten around to watching, but I'm definitely building up that list for days where I have more time to watch movies.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things to do.
Because it's not like an American movie, I never thought it would do so well in like the Academy Awards. So when it won Best Picture, I literally jumped off the couch and I started screaming. I was so excited.
I know, this is a big win, to be honest, and I think that's it's about time that people recognize foreign cinema as equally valid storytelling. And so I'm so happy to hear that they've been doing so well, not only in terms of winning awards, but also having actual, viewers' interest, because I feel like a lot of people watched that movie in the last couple of years, which
Yeah.
is, absolutely insane. It's great, and it's something to really celebrate. But yeah, it's quite nice watching some movies, and I think, for example, I've only recently started watching all the Ghibli movies. I've never watched them
Oh.
before, so it's been blowing my mind. Entirely new world of, you know, um, animated experience. So I've started collecting them as well. They've been just, so good.
Which ones do you like the most?
Oh gosh, up until recently, my favorite one was Spirited Away. And I really love, My Neighbor Totoro, because it reminds me of my own childhood, growing up in a small village near a forest, having active imagination, things like that. It felt really close to what my childhood experience was like, except for the big Totoro.
Yeah, of course. No Totoro's here.
Yeah, but I think recently my favorite had switched to what was the name? It was House Moving Castle.
Oh,
That is my
yeah.
favorite now.
I love
Yeah,
Howl's Moving Castle.
I just heard everybody talking about it, so I was like, I'm gonna watch it too, and it was like amazing. It absolutely stole my heart away. It was a great movie.
Yeah. I saw it pretty late compared to most people because it only came out in the mid 2000s, I think. So a lot of people I know saw it growing up, but I watched it just a few years ago when I was in college, and I was absolutely amazed by like the visuals and the plot, and then like the old lady thing, how they did that so well. I feel like that would be
Yeah,
hard to pull off.
I think that's the best thing about all these Ghibli movies is they feel like realistic story, fairy tales, which is technically an oxymoron, but at the same time, it feels like they're in an alternative reality where the possible and the impossible is very possible. So it's such a joy to watch them, and they're so detailed. It's so obvious that a lot of love and labor has been put in them. So, they've absolutely opened a whole new side of animation for me. I hadn't watched them before, and I feel like it would have been great to watch them when I was younger, but I also feel like it's giving me a more technical appreciation for all the work that went into them as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, they managed to make everybody extremely interesting, even if it's not necessarily someone that you would like in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's a wonderful movie. I think most of Ghibli's movies are really strong as it is, but I feel like this one just made it so difficult not to love it. It's just so great. The premise is very interesting. The characters are fleshed out. Even the flame, was an amazingly entertaining character. And how many
Yeah.
people can say that about the flame? Not many. So I think it's a great source of inspiration watching these movies.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any advice for like maintaining a work-life balance while maintaining progress on your webtoon?
I think for me, the biggest part really was that when I started making the webcomic, I had set myself a very ambitious goal. So initially, my plan was to update my comic weekly.
Mm.
And after a little while, I realized that my work-life balance just wasn't allowing it, and that was really getting to my mental health, because I felt like I was disappointing people, and I didn't want people to think that I didn't care or that I was being lazy.
Mm.
And it was just, I was really, really tired all the time. And I also, some days, I just really needed to not do anything. I just needed to have a break day. And I think it was very helpful at the time that I had someone that, lives with me, my partner, who was seeing this, and he just put his foot down and said, nope, you have to take care of your, of your mental health first. You still need to be able to enjoy this. You need to revisit your schedule. So I was like, okay, that's sensible. I think that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So what I've started doing is I was setting myself the update twice monthly goal. And I think that's a lot more realistic for me to achieve. And that makes me happy when I do achieve it, because I'm not lying to people. I'm not saying, oh, I'm updating this week, but then not updating. And I was mostly able to keep up to schedule. And if I was able to come up with anything extra, it was, a bonus, which was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think sometimes you just really need to be honest with yourself with how much you can really afford to do. And, sometimes you also have to be very honest with yourself with, am I being too ambitious? Even if you want to update more often, I think you have to keep in mind of, are you actually able to provide what you're promising? And then adjust from there. And I think it's been a good decision, because I wouldn't have been able to do this consistently and still love it and still be able to actually have some time off between work and doing comics. And I also didn't want it to start feeling so overwhelmingly like a second job. Because I feel like a lot of the time my actual full-time job is quite taxing, both physically and mentally. And if I start thinking about making comics as another thing that adds to my workload, I think I wouldn't enjoy making it for very long. So I think that's, my advice is, know your schedule, be honest with yourself and what you can provide, and try and keep to that schedule. And if you feel like you're struggling providing, getting episodes out at the schedule that you've set yourself, then maybe revisit your schedule and give yourself some leeway. Be kind to yourself. Most people would be kind to you, so try and be kind to yourself as well.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like sustainability is super underrated.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people...
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. A lot of people want to jump in and then try to do everything all at once and then move at a pace that you just can't continue at. But if you have a really long story, you got to be able to keep it up for a really long time.
Yeah, I think it was tough in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, I do find it quite difficult not to compare yourself to other creators that are bringing episodes every single week. But then again, you don't really know other people's situations. They might be working from home. They might not have a job at the moment. This might be their full-time job. So you don't really know if people are coping with that schedule because they can afford to. And I think it's unfair for yourself, for you to be so hard on yourself without knowing individual circumstances and also comparing yourself to other creators. I think that is never going to work in your favor. And the interesting part is I don't feel like I ever compare myself in terms of story or likes or followers or anything else. It just feels like sometimes in terms of pacing, you feel like you're falling behind in productivity, and I hate feeling unproductive, if it makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. I get that too, even though I post every week. I'm always like, I wish I could do more.
Oh no.
I think it's kind of weird too, like, I could hear this a little bit in you, but like there's almost a sense of like, even though we're doing this just for our own sort of like personal sake, there's almost a sense of guilt if you don't update a certain amount or have a certain amount of story to put up.
Oh gosh, yes. I think, last month I only managed to bring one episode out in the whole of November, and that has been a cloud over my head for, the past week. and I felt so guilty that I haven't updated more in that month. But just so many things happened in that month that, I know deep in my heart that I couldn't have gotten that episode out even if I wanted to. I could have maybe put something out there, but it would have been disappointing for me and definitely disappointing for my readers. And I think I'd rather wait and give them something that they would enjoy rather than try and update something that would be disappointing and then I would be, ashamed to look back on. But definitely, I think creators could be so harsh on themselves, even though this is all voluntarily. Most of us canvas creators aren't really being paid for it, so
or even if we're being paid, it's like not enough to like even remotely think about living on.
Oh god, yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know some creators have Patreons, and that seems to help somewhat, but definitely, not enough to live off of.
Yeah. Or like, so by the time this video goes up, I'm going to be on like a small hiatus. Because I want to take a little bit of a break just for like my own like physical health, because I think I'm just tired. I think I just need to like sleep for a couple days.
Yes, girl, look after yourself.
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate for that, so.
But I feel kind of guilty that I'm going to take a break and that I'm going to be posting the shorter episodes, even though I'm planning on doing just as much work, which is kind of weird.
See, that is crazy because you're still planning on returning. You have a particular schedule. You're planning on having shorter episodes and everything. So you are already being organized and productive. And I feel like telling people in advance, okay, we're going to have a hiatus for this amount of time, but I'm coming back on that, seems to help. I feel like almost nobody would ever, mind something like that. I suppose it's just a matter of us creators telling each other and telling ourselves that it's okay to take a break sometimes. The world would still be there and waiting for us when we do come back.
Yeah, and the story too. The story's always gonna wait for me. It has to.
It better not run away somewhere.
Oh, it better not. It better not. I had somebody comment the other day that they wanted to help be a writer on the story, but they hadn't actually read the story yet. And I'm like, one, I wouldn't want someone to help write the story with me unless I was being like seriously paid. Two, you just said you haven't read the story. Why do you want to write the story with me?
Oh gosh. Oh, I think it's I can't even imagine asking someone to help me with the writing, mostly because I get so embarrassed when I talk to people about what's about to happen in the stories. And I think that's part of it being, a romance story. So it could feel a bit awkward talking to people about what's to happen in the story. And up till now, I only have my partner as a listening board. So sometimes I just sit him down and I talk him through what I'm about to do in the story and just, wait for his opinion as being a regular guy who doesn't necessarily read lots of romance. And it's always very interesting to get his point of view as a man and as someone who doesn't read romance very regularly.
Yeah.
He's very firmly on Phil's side of things so far. Mm-hmm. So I can't imagine having to talk to somebody else like about, oh, this is going to happen in the future, or maybe this character is going to be insecure about this. I think I'm just too shy about that.
Yeah. Or like, I don't really mind like chatting with people, but it would feel kind of weird to have like an actual co-writer, because at this point it feels like they're my kids. It would be like giving away my children. It would be weird.
You're co-parenting my children. How dare you? I imagine, especially if they choose to bring the story in a direction you're not quite sure of, that might feel very, very interesting, very vulnerable.
Yeah. Or like, I've actually changed a lot of stuff because I feel like the characters have just, like, I don't want to say they've like developed a bunch because I feel like they haven't really learned any lessons, but like they've become more and more people So I really get that sense that they start to just do things at this point, and it's like I can't stop them because this is just what they do.
Yeah, I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I think you always start a story with the idea of, okay, you're that type of person, and then you're that type of person. But as you keep writing their interactions, they just seem to take a life of their own and, make choices that you're like, are you sure you want to do that? And you just know deep in your heart that that's exactly what they would have done. So you just kind of let them do what they want.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. So back to the advice. Do you have any advice for working on art or even learning art in general?
Yeah, I think the biggest advice that I can give to someone in regards to improving your art is study the film form, study cinematography.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is really, really useful in terms of concepts, in terms of, structuring your panels. I think that is a hugely useful knowledge and skill to have. And the next one is just explore different styles and mediums. I know people who don't like experimenting with different mediums, but I feel like that has been actually really helpful in terms of color mixing, general coloring, having to, simplify different styles. And yeah, and the third one is just draw what you like, and don't try to make something that you feel would be commercially popular. I know plenty of artists who have their own art style, and that is more a strength than a weakness. So do what you like, draw what you want, and don't get too self-conscious about your art not being good enough, because people really do care about the story, and your art is going to improve anyways. So just give it a shot, just go for it.
Yeah, just go for it. That might be the thumbnail. I didn't think about what's going to be the thumbnail.
Yeah, definitely. I think so many artists stop themselves from doing what they love, from telling the story that they're passionate about, because they're worried about the art. And I think that is such a trap to fall into. And some of the best stories I've ever read were ones with a very, very specific art style to the creator, and that just adds more to the story, if nothing else.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, I think for my story in particular, had I not worked on the comic and I just given up after the first 3 episodes and kept applying for like storyboard stuff, I think there's no way my art would have improved as much as it did. Or if I just kept redoing stuff, because it just came from the experience of having to put the characters into different situations and having to pick different shots and having to actually look up cinematography again. It's a whole different experience than just studying.
Yeah, it's all the practice that you put while making the comic rather than preparing for the comic. And someone did say, and I can't really remember who did, but they were saying, if you want to improve your art, just make a comic, because you have to draw all these things you've never drawn before. You hate drawing cars? Well, you might have to. You hate drawing buildings? Well, you definitely need establishing shots. So, your art would always get better as long as you keep going. So definitely go for it. And if you're too worried about the story you love so much, maybe start with a shorter comic. Make something to improve your art and also tell a story, if you don't want to tackle your big beloved story.
Yeah.
From start.
Or do something like the short story contest where there's like an actual limit of what you can create. Yeah.
That's perfect. And there are a few other challenges I know around the year that would be really suitable. I know there is a 24-hour comic day somewhere in October or November, where you make a full 24-page comic in a day, so a page an hour. And I did take part in it once, and it was so much fun. And you just have to do it because time is tickling away. So that's a really good challenge for someone who wants to try.
So do you have any advice for the comic side, not necessarily the art?
Yeah, I would say, there are a lot of tutorials of how to make comics, which is valid, and I think they're valuable resources if you're not quite sure what you're doing. But I would also say is do things the way that feels more comfortable to you. And similar to my previous advice, is just tell the story that you want to tell. For example, Move Me is a very acquired taste romance. It's very, into the whole medical thing. That might not be, everyone's cup of tea. It has terminology and things, and I'm very, excited to try and make that as realistic as I can without really compromising the narrative. So people who appreciate that would be, a specific crowd, but they would like it nonetheless if that is something they're excited about. So, as long as you're passionate about your story, just keep going, just make that story instead of trying to make something that is successful. I think in a lot of forums I see people, saying, oh, would this story sound like something that would get successful, that would get picked as Webtoon originals? And wow, it's good to have, goals for the future and wanting to be on Webtoon original. I think it's even more important that you're passionate about your story, no matter how niche or not popular. You should take the chance, make the story, and people who appreciate it would come to you.
Yeah, definitely. Like, people can really tell when you're being genuine, I feel like, or enthusiastic, and they can pick up on that energy very easily.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you want to get popular, there is nothing wrong with that. But also, wouldn't it be so much better to get popular for something that you're really passionate about? And I think if you're gonna spend hours and weeks and months working on this one story, pick one that you really, really want to tell.
Yeah.
Even if you don't think people would like it as much.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing is too, like, I've heard this said a couple times, but there are easier ways to get rich and famous over something that you're not very passionate about than comics. So you should at least try to do something that you enjoy if you're gonna take the hard way.
You picked the wrong area.
The wrong struggle.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, definitely, just be passionate about your story. And I think sometimes people might focus on particular aspect of your story. If that is not what you want to do, you don't have to, you don't have to turn your adventure story into a romance because people are shipping your characters or so on. I think, keep an eye on your vision. Use the feedback people give you to improve on it, and just have a fun time. In the end of the day, that's a long journey, and having a fun time really is what you can hope for.
Yeah. So the last question that I like to end off with is, do you have any just life advice? It could be about anything.
Oh, life advice. Interesting. I think it's so difficult for me to really give anyone life advice because I feel like most of the time I'm really just having no idea what I'm doing with my life anyways. I think, keep an eye on the important things in life, family, friends, and really just do what you want to do. If that is your, if you have a dream, really go for it because, we do live one life, and it's better to look back and say, oh, okay, I tried that one thing. It maybe worked for me, maybe didn't. Than to look back and say, you know, I wish I had done this when I had the chance, when I had the time, you know, when I didn't have all these responsibilities and so. So if you're thinking about making a comic or web comic, you're really losing nothing by trying. So give it a shot, you know, give it a try, give it your best try, as they say in anime, you know, always try your best and so on. And I think this is the biggest one. I think live without the regrets of not having tried to do what you really want to do.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you haven't made a comic before or you're thinking about it, just go for it. Give it a shot, even if it doesn't work out.
Yes, exactly. And I'm sure there will be someone out there who would appreciate your comic, so definitely try.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to tell everyone where to follow you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on Webtoons, Twitter, and Instagram under the same name. It's Aslansniece, and I post lots of sketches and just general recommendations. So feel free to follow me anywhere there.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This was such a fun interview.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. It was a really different perspective. Well, maybe like not your opinions, but like I feel like you're at like a different life point than the other people I've interviewed. So it's really nice to just learn more.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me as well. And you know, I love your art, I love your channel, and you seem like such a lovely person. Thank you for guiding me through all this, even though I'm a nervous wreck and just shaking when I'm talking. So
honestly, same.
Yeah, I've had lots of fun, and definitely, you know, hopefully you wouldn't mind. I'll keep pestering you, asking questions about your comic in the future. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, if you guys want to follow me too, you can just search my name on social media. I'm not too difficult to find, and you can go check out That Witch Is My Sister on Webtoon Canvas.
Definitely check it out. It's such a good comic.
Yeah. All right, thank you guys for listening. I'll see you guys in the next video or interview. Bye.
Bye.